Today we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations by using the cross method. Now what we've mentioned before is that when you have an equation in the format ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b, and c are constants and a does not equal 0, you have a quadratic equation and one unknown. A root, then, of the equation is also referred to as the solution of the equation. Now remember, we've talked about before, when graphing quadratic equations, you could have one solution, you could have two solutions, or you could have no solutions based on the graph. That relates to solving for equations. So the first thing we're going to do then is figure out how to solve quadratic equations. Quadratic equations can be solved using the cross method. We've done this before in the past. If you've forgotten how to use the cross method, you can go ahead and look up how to factor quadratic equations using the cross method. But let's go ahead and start with this example. You have 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 equals 0. First thing we're going to go ahead and do is use the cross method to factor this equation. And let's see. When I go ahead and cross multiply here, I end up with a negative 6x and a positive x, which adds up to negative 5. So I see that the factored form of my equation then is x minus 3 times 2x plus 1. So we've done this part before. Now here's where it gets a little interesting. Here's the next step. So the next thing I'm going to do is set that factored form equal to 0. Because what I want to do is figure out my other answers here. So if I have something in here, I can sub in for x to get 0. Something over here I can sub in for x to get 0 as well. So I need to treat these as two separate equations. So I'm going to have x minus 3 equals 0 and 2x plus 1 equals 0. Here's why. When this equals 0, if we create a little graph over here, x will have some sort of value when y equals 0. If you look at a coordinate graph, here's my x, here's my y, and then as I sketch that parabola, I have 2 points, right here and right here. Now these are the numbers represented by that x number when y equals 0. Now this was just a sketch of the graph. This really doesn't represent the equation over on the left, but hopefully it gives an understanding of why we're setting up the two separate equations. So then I'm just going to go ahead and solve for x in these equations. I have x minus 3 equals 0. All right, well then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I get x equals 3. Then over here I have 2x plus 1 equals 0. Well, if I subtract 1 to both sides, I get 2x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 1/2. So what this tells me is that there are two x values that I can substitute into my original equation of 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 in order to get the whole equation equal to 0. And those two values that I can sub in are x equals 3 and x equals negative 1/2. So now here's your challenge. I want you to try and solve the equation x times, in parentheses, 19 minus 12x equals 5. Here's my hint to you. Make sure to expand first. Good luck.